Launching in 1984 as a small independent comic, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles quickly exploded with a globally popular cartoon series, action figure line, and live-action movie trilogy in only a matter of a few years. Turtlemania took the world by storm, sporting dozens of reboots, spin-offs, and franchise installments in the following decades. In 2024, the TMNT will turn 40 years old, and in this video we'll trace their evolution from 1984 to now. To do so, we'll touch on their design and thematic changes over 4 decades of comics, series, movies, and merchandise. In this edition of Cartoon Evolution presents Pop Culture Evolution. In the early 1980s, 19-year-old art student Kevin Eastman found a copy of Scat, a free black and white independent comic newspaper produced by a group of local artists in Massachusetts. An aspiring fantasy artist, Eastman was drawn to the booklet's satirical and edgy nature, particularly the work of artist Peter Laird. Believing himself to be like-minded, Eastman attempted to sell some ideas to the magazine, writing Laird a letter passionately requesting a meeting to throw around ideas and pick his brain for a little advice. A meeting was granted at Laird's home, and despite their opposing personalities, the outgoing Eastman and the introverted Laird instantly bonded over an appreciation for the underground comics movement, as well as their deep love for influential Marvel and DC comic artist Jack Kirby. Soon enough, the pair had moved in together and started their own comic business, Mirage Studios, aptly named according to Laird because it wasn't really a studio, it was the two of us sitting in our tiny living room with our lap boards and our old stuffed chairs, watching TV and goofing around drawing together. One evening while the pair were watching TV, Eastman happened upon an idea, quickly sketching an anthropomorphic turtle standing on his hind legs, swinging around nunchucks, and wearing a Zorro-like bandana mask. Showing it to Laird, he amusingly quipped, "Hey, this is a Ninja Turtle." Tickled, Laird drew his own version, one slimmer, goofier, and, according to Eastman, cooler. Not wanting to be outdone, Eastman was urged to top Laird's sketch, hurriedly drawing 4 turtles in dramatic action poses, each with different weapons, under the heading Ninja Turtles. Taking the pencil sketch, Laird inked it and added Teenage Mutant to the title, noting it just had a kind of rhyme to it. Eastman said, "We were just pissing our pants that night. This is the dumbest thing ever." However, the pair quickly saw the potential in this wacky spitball and began fleshing it out. Scraping together their savings, a recent tax refund, and a $1,000 loan from Eastman's uncle, the pair spent nearly 3 months putting together an oversized comic book, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Eastman and Laird threw themselves into the comic, solely writing, drawing, and inking. Author and historian Richard Rosenbaum notes that, to the comic, Eastman brought a more outgoing, violent, and emotional edge, while Laird contributed more intellectual elements to the storytelling and art. Regardless, the pair made sure that there was a bit of each of them on each page, a truly collaborative effort. Falling in line with other funny animal satires of the era, the TMNT, as they'd affectionately become known, were a parody of numerous artists and notable works. Of course, there was the dynamic art of their idol Jack Kirby, the Teenage Mutants of his X-Men super team likely inspiring the comic's title, and perhaps more obviously, the dark and grungy graphic work of Frank Miller. Miller's late 1970s to early 80s run on Marvel's Daredevil and his 6-part miniseries Ronin, published by DC, were instrumental, both of which focused on samurais and ninja mercenaries battling underground gangs and crime syndicates in a seedy New York City. Eastman noted they pulled some of their favourite bits from some of their favourite comics. Where Daredevil featured a ninja clan known as The Hand, TMNT saw the heroes up against a ninja clan known as The Foot. Much like Daredevil had his mentor, martial arts master Stick, comic, the Turtles had their mentor, martial arts master Splinter. While Laird would rather use the term homage, the tongue-in-cheek nature of the TMNT was a clear spoof of the popular works that had come before. The initial 40-page issue of TMNT told the satirical origin of 4 baby turtles who were knocked into the New York sewers by a rogue bottle of ooze, transforming them into anthropomorphized mutants when it shatters on them. Collected by sewer rat Splinter, also given an anthropomorphic evolution after contact with the ooze, he trains them in the way of the ninja, preparing them for battle against the Foot Clan and their leader, the Shredder. As it was originally envisioned as a one-off, the Turtles succeed in killing Shredder, a story thread reversed in later issues, leading the character to become the Turtles' archenemy. Though the characters had very little visual or even personality distinction, other than being graced with different weapons, they were given names. Though they initially toyed with Japanese names, the creators ultimately named the Turtles after Italian Renaissance artists, which Laird believed felt just quirky enough to fit the concept. In universe, the comic explained that Splinter had named them after flicking through a battered copy of a book on Renaissance art that he had fished out of the storm drain. There was Leonardo, Michelangelo, Donatello, and Raphael. 3,000 copies were printed, with the entire first run selling out within 3 weeks of release in early 1984. A second printing followed, then a third, and then a fourth in only 2 years. Due to the popularity and very decent profit returns, Eastman and Laird rapidly produced a second issue. It released only 4 months later, selling 15,000 copies in pre-orders alone. Similarly, a second printing came only 3 months later. More issues followed swiftly, with a further 3 released in 1985. By the series' 4th issue, some comic stores reported that they were selling more copies of TMNT than of Marvel's iconic super team, the Avengers. The series also inspired an entire black and white comics boom, perhaps even directly inspiring Frank Miller's iconic Sin City. Eastman and Laird essentially became professional and profitable comic book artists overnight, and TMNT was now officially an ongoing series. Having built a huge cult following in no time, issues were soon selling in excess of 130,000 copies each. The creators had no choice but to expand their enterprise, bringing more artists and creatives on board to help carry the load and the demand. By issue 5, they were no longer going solo, and soon enough stepped down from creative duties altogether. Mirage was no longer a mirage. Numerous licensees began calling in effort to license the characters for merchandise. It was, however, Mark Friedman of Surge Licensing that made the biggest impression, enthusiastically pitching an entire entertainment empire. Friedman noted, "When I first heard the words Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I jumped out of my skin. I know I've got to represent the Turtles, and I would have done any deal with them." After being knocked back by every major toy company, in late 1986, Friedman sold the action figure license to Playmates Toys, who fervently began working on a line of figures. Playmates' first task was to make sure each turtle could be differentiated by more than just their weapons, noting that it would be tough to sell figures of multiple characters if they looked identical. Each turtle was designated their own distinguishable color scheme, depicted across their masks, belts, and neon shoulder pads, as well as a different skin pigment. Additionally, the characters' initials were added to their belt buckles. Playmates' Carl Aronian said, "The whole idea was that you could immediately tell the difference between the turtles by looking at the figures, whether they were in the package or not." Still, with a very niche audience, Friedman knew that to sell Turtles toys, he had to capitalize on a technique used ad nauseum in the 1980s. He said, "We knew before we could sell a single toy, we had to produce the backstory in animation and bring it to the kids." Academy Award-winning animator Fred Wolf was tasked to produce an animated series while Playmates were developing the toys. The TMNT franchise began to take shape. while Laird and Eastman had begun fleshing out their characters in the comics, they still weren't entirely well defined. As such, it became the job of screenwriter David Weiss, a huge fan of the comic, to help translate them onto the screen. Weiss built the dynamic of the Turtles in the classic archetype of four: Leonardo, the martial arts guy and the leader of the group; Donatello, the gadget guy; Raphael, the sarcastic one, allowing the series some comedic relief; and Michelangelo, the fun one, who could embrace the teenageness of the characters. Other comic characters also joined, including Splinter and Shredder, the main villain of the series. Minor character April O'Neil, a lab assistant in the comics, was made a major support, a news reporter who often filled the role of damsel in distress and occasionally assisted the Turtles on their adventures. Casey Jones, a popular vigilante from the comics, also made a recurring transition. Weiss also introduced many other now iconic franchise elements, such as the Turtles' love for watching TV and eating pizza with weird toppings, as well as beloved catchphrases like "Cowabunga!" Initially a throwback to a classic Peanuts comic strip, but soon enough synonymous with the Turtles. Naturally, the series took a more family-friendly, humorous, and less violent spin, helped enormously by an incredible cast of voice actors who really embraced the goofy nature of the writing. Wolf later credited Weiss with setting the keystone of the whole franchise. These are all changes and elements that would eventually transition over into the comics as well, working in tandem with Playmates, who were building an expansive line of figures that reached beyond core characters. The cartoon team were able to cleverly transfer newly created toy line characters into the program, such as Rocksteady and Bebop, Shredder's two mutant henchmen. This collaborative effort helped create a truly symbiotic franchise. Laird noted, "It was a surreal moment to think that less than 3 years after we scraped together the money to publish the first issue, we were going to have a TV show and a toy line." Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, originally commissioned as a 5-episode miniseries, aired over Christmas 1987 on Saturday mornings and was an immediate hit. Playmates toy line followed only months later in 1988, and figures sold out instantly. The franchise penetrated pop culture, with characters, stories, and a rockin' theme song swiftly entering the cultural lexicon. Soon enough, the Turtles were back with new episodes, airing 5 days a week, and new figures and playsets. A craze dubbed Turtlemania gripped the world, as the franchise saw a merchandising explosion. Clothing, accessories, breakfast cereals, lunchboxes, an entire range of video games for home consoles flooded stores. In only 4 years, an estimated $1.1 billion worth of toys alone had been sold. In 1985, Mirage also began expanding the comic world of the TMNT, with a series of 4 one-shot comics focusing on each of the Turtles. In 1987, Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles launched as a backup series, telling further adventures and filling continuity gaps. 1988 saw the launch of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures, a color comic series published through Archie Comics. Aimed at younger readers, it acted as a companion to the cartoon. However, with Laird and Eastman allowing artists free reign, it soon became its own weird beast. Artist Doug Brammer noted, "They were just goofy and strange enough where you can do a lot of things with them." As part of Mirage's collaboration with Archie Comics, one special issue saw the Turtles crossing over with the actual Archie crew. Ninja Turtles Adventures ran through to the middle 90s for 72 issues, for some time the longest running Turtle series. In 1990, Friedman took the Turtles on the road in their very own stage show. As it proved too difficult to stage a play for the kids, the Turtles became rock stars, touring America and the world world with the Coming Out of Their Shells tour, a rock show for kids featuring original songs. The Turtles were portrayed by a troupe of actors in rubber bodysuits and animatronic masks. The costumes didn't feature shells, which would have been too cumbersome to wear. The show's premiere at Radio City Music Hall in New York City was broadcast live on pay-per-view TV and later released on VHS. The show even spawned a CD soundtrack. A wacky marketing campaign also ensued, seeing the Turtles interviewed on various talk shows. 1990 also saw the Turtles star in RTD Presents Operation Blue Line, a 10-minute educational short released direct to VHS. Notably, the only TMNT Media set in California, the short was sponsored by the Southern California Rapid Transportation District and aimed to teach kids about alternative travel methods, such as the new RTD Blue Line train. The short saw actors in cheap mascot costumes overdubbed by the voice actors from the cartoons. 1990 additionally saw the Turtles hit the big screen with their first live-action theatrical feature film. Production began in 1988 with Gary Proper, the road manager of comedian Gallagher, and Showtime producer Kim Dawson optioning live-action rights. With comic book movies considered box office poison at the time, the producers were laughed out of every major Hollywood studio, despite the immense success of TMNT. Realizing the movie could be shot cheaply as a martial arts film, they successfully got a green light from Hong Kong's Golden Harvest, then best known in the West as the studio behind Jackie Chan's movies. Screenwriter Bobby Herbeck remembered taking 6 or 8 weeks to get story approval from Eastman and Laird, saying that he never saw two guys who disagreed so much. Music video director Steve Barron, the visionary behind a-ha's Take On Me, Dire Straits' Money for Nothing, and Michael Jackson's Billie Jean, was chosen as director, with Golden Harvest executive Tom Gray believing his MTV experience could amp the movie up visually and make it a little bit younger. Barron drew inspiration from Ghostbusters and Tim Burton's 1989 Batman, both of which he felt captured the tone he was after, grounded with a sense of humour but a sense of peril, while not being too violent. Thankfully for TMNT, Batman opened as a huge success, marking a turning point for comic book cinema. For the Turtles, producers wanted well-crafted suits with first-class animatronics, and Barron turned to the creature shop of his good friend and Muppets creator, Jim Henson. Barron had directed several David Bowie music videos for Henson's Labyrinth, as well as episodes of Henson's The Storyteller, so Henson was a fan of his work. There was, however, some hesitation. Barron noted, "We got really lucky, he nearly didn't do it," citing it as a risky project to put his name to, given the comic's violent nature. Barron, however, assured him that the tone was going to come from a good place, and it wouldn't damage his legacy. The film told the origins of the TMNT, and saw them defending the Earth from the evil Shredder, taking character iterations and visuals from the cartoons while adapting scenes, storylines, and origins directly from the early comics, as well as taking on their darker tones. At the end of production, producers struggled to find a distributor, with New Line Cinema, then mainly a distributor of independent movies, jumping on board at the final hour. Despite being scared that it wouldn't perform very well, producers were shell-shocked to find the movie an enormous hit. Landing squarely during Turtlemania, crowds attended in droves, pulling a box office of over $200 million on a meager budget of $13.5 million. It was the 5th highest grossing movie of 1990 globally, and the highest grossing independent film to that point. Naturally, a sequel was hastily thrown into production. Every studio in Hollywood clamoured for distribution rights, with Gray telling them all, "Sorry fellas, the sequel stays with the believers." Feeling the crunch and frightened that the success of the movie was a one-off, filmmakers rushed Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: Secrets of the Ooze into theaters, opening in mid-1991. Gray said, We came up with a concept and got that thing shot and on screen in 1 year. As an effort to appeal to younger audiences, the movie was given a lighter, goofier tone. Violence was toned down, with the turtles rarely seen using weapons. Despite a budget twice as large, the hurried, somewhat cheap effort was felt in the final production, receiving largely negative reception upon release. Lloyd Bradley of Empire magazine wrote that it lacked the darkness and subtlety that makes the first film so good and so adult, citing its simplified plot and gags, while Gene Siskel quipped that it was more depressing than joyful. Laird would even say, "The first movie I see as a huge leap forward, and the second movie was a huge step back, so we kind of ended up at square one." The movie made much less at the box office, taking in under $80 million. Regardless, this was still considered a reasonable success, and a third film was greenlit. This time, however, filmmakers took their time, with Gray saying they aired it out for a year. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 opened in mid-1993, despite a somewhat cartoony time travel plot which saw the Turtles sent back to feudal Japan to fight a ruthless daimyo. Filmmakers attempted to make a grand epic, returning to the edgier, more comic book nature of the first, bringing back much of the violent martial arts and gearing itself to broader audiences. Unfortunately, TMNT 3 suffered a worse reception. Michael Wilmington of the LA Times called it sequel hell, saying the first movie was a fluke hit, while James Berardinelli said that the script could have been written by young children. On a budget of $21 million, it took in less than $55 million, the worst of the series. Despite plans for a fourth movie to be released in 1996, titled across various screenplays as either The Foot Walks Again or The Next Mutation, it never eventuated. Regardless, live-action Turtles returned to the screen in 1994 for 2 half-hour direct-to-video specials, Turtle Tunes and We Wish You a Turtle Christmas. Turtle Tunes saw the Turtles given their very own variety TV show, where they present music videos of them singing turtle-fied children's classics, while Turtle Christmas saw them on the hunt for a last-minute Christmas gift for Splinter, all the while singing, dancing, and rapping.
Come on, say it again, y'all. The rap. Yeah.
It not only featured Christmas songs, but some tunes recycled from the Out of Their Shells tour. The specials utilised primitive rubber costumes like those used in the stage show. Collectively, these are often considered the absolute worst pieces of Turtle media to ever exist, though Turtle Christmas has ironically gone on to become a hilarious, tongue-in-cheek Christmas tradition for many Turtles fans. In 1996, the cartoon ended after 10 seasons and 193 episodes. The latter seasons are notable for much darker stories and tone. It's commonly considered one of the greatest TV cartoons of all time. In 1997, the Playmates line terminated, having complemented the series and movies at every step. Around 400 figures and dozens of vehicles and playsets were produced. Though Laird later said that he had a distaste for the cartoon and the ensuing family-geared franchise, wishing it had taken a different approach, he and Eastman were blown away by its popularity, saying it was slightly surreal because we had done this thing just for fun and it really took on a life of its own. Meanwhile, Turtles comics were still going strong. The original volume had come to an end in 1993, with a second all-colour volume launching later that year. It was, however, nowhere near as popular and ended in 1995 after only 13 issues. A third volume ran between 1996 and 1999, published by Image, written by Gary Carlson and penciled by Frank Fosco. It returned to black and white and told stories in a faster pace with more intense action and violence. The series made some odd changes, including turning Donatello into a cyborg and Splinter into a bat. Following dropping sales, it was cancelled after 23 issues. The volume was, however, reprinted in colour in 2018, with 3 new issues written by Carlson and Fosco, bringing a conclusion to the story. The early to mid-90s also saw some successful spin-off comics, including a number of Casey Jones miniseries and crossovers with satirical superhero The Flaming Carrot and Eric Larsen's The Savage Dragon. Between 1994 and 1995, the first Turtles manga also launched in Japan, Dengeki Comics' Mutant Turtles, a gag manga which freely adapted storylines from the cartoon. A more serious 4-chapter manga series, Mutant Turtles Gaiden, or Side Story, then launched in 1995. Though only loosely based on the cartoon, it utilized its character iterations and designs with a sharper manga style and recycled some of its storylines. These books have never been published in the West. In 1996, the Turtles appeared in their very first anime, a 2-part OVA titled Mutant Turtles Superman Legend. Produced by B Media and Tsuburaya Productions, it was designed to promote and capitalize on 2 new toy lines, the mecha-inspired Super Mutants and Metal Mutants collections, each part of the OVA inspired by each respective collection. Though not canon to the cartoon, it did, again, utilize its character depictions and used the voice cast from TV Tokyo's Japanese dub. A third Dengeki series, Super Turtles, was also published across 3 volumes, acting as a prequel to the OVA. In 1997, the Turtles returned to live action in TV series Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation. Though touted as a continuation of the cartoon, it was also clearly a sequel to the live action film series, utilizing many of the same sets and similar costumes, though noticeably cheaper. In fact, it not only took one of the preliminary titles from the trashed 4th movie, it also borrowed elements from it, and even kicked off with a 5-part pilot episode, East Meets West, which was later released as a 100-minute direct-to-home video movie. The series continued the Turtles' adventures fighting Shredder and the Foot Clan, as well as new villains, the Rank, and their leader, the Evil Dragon Lord. A new character was also introduced, Venus de Milo, the 5th and only female turtle. Venus quickly became the scorn of Turtles fans and was barred from all future Turtles installments by Laird. Future filmmakers weren't even allowed to make a joke about her. Produced by Saban Entertainment, the company behind the Power Rangers, the Turtles crossed over into 1998's Power Rangers in Space for the episode Shell Shocked, where the 2 supergroups teamed up against Astronomer. Additionally, Michelangelo made a brief appearance in National Lampoon's 1998 sci-fi parody TV movie Men in White. Though some have fond childhood memories of the show, Next Mutation was ill-received, lasting only 1 season of 26 episodes. It's considered to be one of the worst Turtles productions and is described by Laird as the only licensed product that I truly regret. In 2001, Mirage launched a 4th comic volume, simply titled TMNT, with script by Laird and art by original artist Jim Lawson. The entire continuity of the bizarre Volume 3 was rendered non-canon, with Volume 4 taking place 15 years after Volume 2, and seeing the Turtles in their mid-30s. Again, produced in black and white in the style of Volume 1, it was well received. With Turtlemania having simmered down, the Turtles were allowed some time to rest on the screen, returning in 2003 for a brand new animated series produced by 4Kids Entertainment and Mirage. With Laird heavily involved in the production, the new Turtles series was designed to be darker, grittier, and more violent than the 80s-90s cartoon, despite still utilizing the now iconic character designs popularized by it. Despite a more mature tone, it was still geared at audiences of all ages. It also featured a smoother, modern animation style. With a large sway towards sci-fi and fantasy, TMNT 2003 adapted a multitude of comic stories and kept origins more closely tied to them. Easily the most successful TMNT project in years, it was highly praised by audiences and critics and saw huge commercial success, running until 2009 for 7 seasons and 155 episodes. It concluded with an 80-minute telemovie, Turtles Forever, which crossed over both animated series, with the 87 Turtles and villains transported into the 2003 Turtles reality. In a multiverse-inspired adventure, the finale also saw the appearance of the comic Turtles, with all three groups fighting together to save mankind. An incredibly meta ending with cameos by Eastman and Laird capped it all off.
Oh, I sure hope this thing sells.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
In 2007, the Turtles returned to the big screen for their very first theatrically animated adventure, TMNT. Director Kevin Munro wanted to return the Turtles to their comic roots, delivering a movie less comedic or light-hearted than the previous, one with a more mature edge. Munro said, "We wanted to do something where it sort of pushes the envelope a little bit more and says that animation is more than just comedic animals bumping into each other and farting." While the movie, produced entirely in computer animation, a very first for any Turtles media, is said to exist in its own universe by Laird, Munro wanted to keep certain ties to the live-action features, throwing in small callbacks and Easter eggs, ultimately creating a loose standalone sequel. The movie sees the Turtles fresh off defeating the Shredder, coming together to fight ancient, evil creatures hell-bent on destroying the world, making over $95.5 million at the global box office on a budget of $34 million. It was a reasonable success, with a pair of sequels initially considered. In 2009, Laird, now sole owner of the franchise, sold the rights to Viacom, who designated it a Nickelodeon property. The sale occurred during Laird's run on the Volume 4 comic, and despite retaining the rights to continue with it through Mirage, only published sporadic issues, with the run coming to an end after a decade in 2014 with issue 32. A run of side series also spawned during this time, including a second volume of Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and four-part character-centric mini-series. Mirage Studios closed in 2021. Additionally, Nickelodeon commissioned IDW to produce a new series of comics, with the first issue published in 2011. Eastman joined the preliminary creative team, meaning that, initially at least, there were two ongoing TMNT series helmed by each of the creators. Described as a groundbreaking new origin, the IDW series put a fresh, modern spin on TMNT, retaining the gritty tones and stylistic artwork while utilizing a muted color palette. Trevor Van As of How to Love Comics notes that the series found a happy medium for all the different interpretations of the Turtles over the years. Incredibly successful and largely popular with fans, IDW's series continues today. With over 270 issues, including spin-offs, it is the longest running comic in the franchise's history. One notable miniseries was 2020's The Last Ronin, based on an unused idea from Eastman and Laird from the 1980s, marking the first time the pair had been credited on a comic for many years. Several exciting crossovers have also been published under IDW, including two series opposite the Power Rangers, two series alongside the Ghostbusters, a one-shot issue as part of the X-Files conspiracy event, and a popular trilogy teaming the TMNT with DC Comics' Batman. 2012 saw Nickelodeon launch their first Turtles cartoon, once again titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, in the final season. Like the 2007 movie, the series was produced in computer animation, the first for a Turtles series. However, geared towards an audience aimed 6 to 11, it took on the goofier, more colourful and comedic tone of the other series and live-action movies. While character personalities remained the same, physicalities took on a rounder, more kid-friendly design. Again, it was hugely successful, breaking viewership records on premiere and running until 2017 for 5 seasons and 125 episodes, even spawning a new range of action figures and merchandise. In 2014, Viacom's Paramount Pictures and Nickelodeon released their first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie. Produced by Michael Bay, the movie took a grittier, more mature tone than the previous movies, though with moments of light humour. It additionally tried to bring a more down-to-earth realism to the franchise, built in the mould of 2008's Batman flick The Dark Knight, which had a widespread influence on franchise media of the period. This time the movie took a hybrid form, with human characters portrayed in live action and the Turtles CG animated. Motion capture performance technologies were, however, used to bring them to life. Initially, the movie, set to be called simply Ninja Turtles, was set to mix up the Turtles' origin by making them aliens from a turtle planet. However, this was reversed following swift, immense backlash from fans. Laird even called it an ill-conceived plan that had no real place in the Turtles universe. Instead, the movie took on more conventional storytelling with a traditional origin, seeing the Turtles up against the Shredder and the Foot Clan. While not credited outside of creator, Eastman was involved as a creative consultant, helping director Jonathan Liebsman tie the movie into the mythology. The movie opened to mixed to average reception, with critics labelling it cringeworthy, weird, grotesque, and half-hearted. Despite this, it saw gigantic commercial success, taking in nearly $500 million on a near $150 million budget, becoming not only the highest-grossing Turtles movie, but Nickelodeon's highest-grossing too. As such, a sequel was greenlit, with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows premiering in 2016. Following the reaction to the first, it took a lighter tone, veering closer to the series' goofier installments. The movie saw a rematch between the Turtles and the Shredder, this time accompanied by his mutant henchmen Bebop and Rocksteady in their first movie appearance. Also introduced from the comics was alien warlord Krang. Shadows was also met with a lukewarm reception, many this time finding it too silly. Likewise, it saw a much lower box office, taking in $245.6 million on a $135 million budget. Trade paper The Hollywood Reporter estimated that the studio lost at least $75 million on the movie. In 2014's The Lego Movie, Michelangelo made numerous cameo appearances in Lego form, once at the Master Builders reunion and later in a flashback sequence. In 2018, all four Turtles in their live-action movie iterations likewise cameoed in Steven Spielberg's Ready Player One, amidst a myriad of other pop culture appearances. In 2018, Nickelodeon prepared their second TMNT cartoon, Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Returning to traditional animation, Rise was produced in a more stylized, contemporary style, with neon colors and terrifically over-the-top action sequences. Rise was touted as a new reimagining, with Nickelodeon saying, "The Turtles is a property that has reinvention in its DNA, which keeps it fresh and relevant to every new generation, while satisfying the demand from its adult fans, with more humour, a younger and lighter feel, and all new dimensions to explore." As such, the series depicted the characters as younger teens, and saw them on more light-hearted adventures with simple humour and inspirational messaging. While Season 1 saw them fight the evil alchemist Baron Draxum, the Foot Clan, and an assortment of new villains, the Shredder was the main antagonist of Season 2. Rise wasn't well received by older fans, but was enjoyed by the younger target audience. It lasted only 2 seasons of 39 episodes, concluding in 2020. However, in 2022, Nickelodeon released Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, direct to Netflix, designed as a finale to help complete the experience of the series, while also working as an exciting standalone set piece. The movie took on the style of the show with a slightly darker, more cinematic edge. As such, the movie was received far better than the series itself. 2019 saw the release of Batman vs. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a direct-to-home media movie part of the DC animated movie line, produced as a collaboration between Nickelodeon and Warner Bros. Animation. Based on the comic miniseries, the movie sees the TMNT and Batman's Bat family team up in Gotham City to fight the Shredder and the Foot Clan and Ra's al Ghul and the League of Assassins. A one-shot disconnected from any previous TMNT or Batman Media, it again put a serious yet light-hearted spin on the characters, though is easily the TMNT's darkest animated depiction, feeling tonally closer to a Batman movie. To differentiate it as a standalone, Nickelodeon insisted it couldn't use the Rise of TMNT voice cast. It was well received, and producer Ben Jones, who had worked on both TMNT and Batman cartoons, has spoken of hopes to produce a sequel with Batman landing in the TMNT world. Another odd DC TMNT crossover was a 2018 DLC pack, which brought the Turtles into DC fighting game Injustice as playable characters. In 2023, Nickelodeon's latest iteration of TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, has hit theaters. Developed, produced, and written by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, the movie naturally takes a heavily comedic spin, leaning into the teenage angle of the property more than ever, and delivering the first literal TMNT teen movie. With a wildly different narrative and stylistic spin, the movie acts as yet another origin story, retelling the Turtles' mutation and seeing them on their very first adventures, fighting a horde of evil mutants, utilizing a now popular hybrid style featuring computer animation with traditional hand-drawn embellishments. Director Jeff Rowe wanted to bring an exaggerated design to the world, inspired by sketches he made in school notebooks as a teenager. Mutant Mayhem was greeted with an overwhelmingly positive reception from audiences and critics, immediately landing itself a certified fresh designation on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics praised the movie for its unique visual style, inventive animation, and authentic approach. IGN's Tom Jorgensen said it oozes confidence, energy, and heart, calling the movie a new high for the Turtles on the big screen. At the time of this video's publication, 2 weeks into its US and European run, the movie, produced on a lean $70 million budget, has pocketed $100 million at the global box office against staunch competition, including 2 of 2023's biggest movies, Barbie and Oppenheimer. Set to open across Asia and Australasia in the coming weeks, the movie is expected to pull in greater earnings and have long legs globally. Additionally, Deadline reported the TMNT brand to have already pulled in $1 billion in global retail merchandise sales for 2023 by mid-August alone, crediting Paramount with single-handedly vibrantly reviving TMNT for another generation with the movie. Mere days before the release of the movie, Variety reported that Paramount and Nickelodeon Movies had already greenlit a sequel, in addition to a 2-season series for Paramount Plus titled Tales of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which will fill the gap between both movies, much like the original Tales comic did with the original comic issues. The studio hopes that these new productions will reinvigorate and expand the property for modern audiences, noting that this project has been years in the making. What's next for the Turtles isn't entirely certain, though a 2021 report from Deadline revealed that Paramount are continuing to keep more live-action Turtles productions in the conversation, with Michael Bay apparently on board for yet another reboot. Almost 40 years on, the Turtles somehow feel more relevant now than ever. Sure, it's a franchise that's seen huge heights and tremendous lows, but it's one that keeps rebounding with fresh, new, welcome installments that somehow continue to capture the attention of those of all ages. It's hard to put a finger on what makes TMNT so special, but whatever it is, it's one example of a franchise that refuses to die. Cowabunga, dude! And with that, I want to know your thoughts on the TMNT and your favourite TMNT series, movie, or appearance. As always, join the conversation down below.